Hello everyone, you all are welcome to this channel. In this video, we are going to talk about a very interesting topic in food technology, which is called food preservation. At the end of the video, you will be able to have a better idea about what is meant by food preservation, importance of food preservation and common food preservation methods that you can utilize to preserve your food for a longer period of time. Okay, let's begin with the definition of food preservation. Before we move into the definition, have you heard of the term called food spoilage? The idea is that all food that we are consuming may undergo a different level of deterioration because of different reasons. The reason for this food spoilage can be physical, chemical or microbial reaction. As a result of that, it will reduce the edibility of food and make them unfit for human consumption. As well as it will reduce the nutritional value and sensory attributes like color, texture, and flavor of food. For instance, think about spoiled milk which smells bad and having sour taste. Also you may experience unpleasant odor in rotten eggs. Not only that, food spoilage will lead to change in the appearance of food. For example, rotten apples, you may see some bruised spots on the surface of the fruit, as well as you may see mold grow on the bread when it gets spoiled. Furthermore, you can observe slimy textures on spoiled fish and meat. So in order to keep the quality and safety of food for a long time, we need to preserve them. We can define food preservation as processes or techniques used to prevent food spoilage, maintain their desired properties and prolong shelf life for as long as possible. The ultimate objective of food preservation is to increase the shelf life of foods while retaining their original nutritional value and sensory properties. That means just enhancing the shelf life of food is not enough. We have to retain the original quality of the product through this preservation process. Our next question is, why do we need to preserve food? What are the importance of the food preservation process? Here are some benefits of the food preservation process. As you already know, food preservation helps to increase the shelf life of food and enhance their organoleptic properties. Also, it will help to overcome inappropriate planning of agriculture. Further, we can reduce the wastage of food during peak harvesting periods by using food preservation methods. Not only that, we can ensure food quality and safety, but also improve nutritional and functional properties of food by preserving them. In addition to that, we can increase the profit margin and consumer acceptability through value addition. You know, as consumers, we mostly like to enjoy a wide variety of food items and get pleasurable experiences. Isn't it? So through preserving we can experience variation in diet. Let's see how we can classify food preservation methods. Food preservation methods can be broadly classified as inhibition, inactivation and avoid recontamination. Food preservation methods that slow down or inhibit the growth of spoilage and pathogenic microorganisms and other chemical deterioration include drying, freezing, fermentation, acidification, concentration, refrigeration-like methods. Methods that directly inactivate or kill bacteria, molds, yeasts and enzymes include pasteurization, sterilization, cooking, and irradiation-like methods. Methods that avoid recontamination of the product before and after the processing include aseptic processing, hygienic storage, packaging, hygienic processing and more. Even though there are numerous food preservation methods, we should think about properties of food that need to preserve before selecting one. The thing is, one property may be important for one product, but detrimental for others. For example, a consumer expects apple juice to be clear whereas orange juice could be cloudy. As the next part of this video, we are going to talk about common food preservation techniques that are widely used in the world. We can also use those methods to preserve our foods. Most of the methods I am going to teach you today are conventional food preservation methods. I will bring you another video about novel food preservation techniques applied in the food processing industry. Well, shall we begin with our very first method of food preservation, which is called drying? Drying is considered one of the oldest methods of food preservation. Drying involves removing moisture from the food through the evaporation process. It is a combination of heat and mass transfer processes. Do you know how to preserve food by drying mechanism? In this method, what we are doing is, we reduce the moisture content of foods up to the desired level, which inhibits the growth of food spoilage and pathogenic microorganisms. That means drying reduces the free water available for microbial growth and other chemical and enzymatic degradation processes. So in drying, food preservation is achieved through the reduction of water activity of the food, to the level which prevent the food spoilage by pathogenic and spoilage microorganisms. Most of the bacteria get inactivated at water activity below 0.9. Whereas most yeast and molds are inhibited in water activity below 0.8 and 0.7 accordingly. Drying methods can be categorized as natural drying methods or artificial drying methods. In natural drying methods, we are removing moisture present in food by using solar energy. In case of artificial drying methods, we dehydrate the food by efficient removal of moisture by using mechanical or electrical equipment under controlled conditions like temperature, airflow, and time. Let's see how we can preserve our food by natural sun drying method. Sun drying refers to the process of removing excess water from food by exposing them to sunlight. The main aim of sun drying is to prolong the shelf life of food. Since ancient times, people have used sun-drying methods to preserve their foods. The interesting fact is sun is a free source of energy, and most of the developing countries who are struggling to access fossil fuels can get benefits out of sun-drying. The most traditional method of sun-drying is the open sun-drying method. Next, let's see how we can perform open sun-drying. First, food products to be dried are spread on the ground or concrete or wooden floors as a thin layer. Then they are exposed to direct contact with sunlight to remove excess moisture from food with the action of wind. This drying process continues for several days until achieving the required level of drying. Do you know what are the ideal conditions for sun drying? Dry, hot, breezy days are best for sun drying. Also, we need a minimum temperature of 86 Fahrenheit or 30 Celsius and humidity below 60% to facilitate a better drying process. In the sun drying method, take care to prevent product contamination by dust, dirt, insects, or any other contaminants. Sun drying method is used to dry fruits, vegetables, fish and more. Our next question is, what are the artificial ways of drying we can use to preserve our food? Some of the methods can be simply mentioned for your understanding. They include tray drying method, tunnel drying, roller or drum drying, spray drying, fluidized bed drying, vacuum drying, freeze drying method and many more. Even though there are numerous drying methods, we should select the most appropriate drying method based on the nature of the food commodity, the desired nature of the finished goods, economic, and operational conditions. For your understanding, tray dryers are mainly used to dry fruits like apples, apricot, banana and vegetables. Spray dryers are used to dehydrate foods that can be atomized, including liquid foods, low viscosity purees, and pastes. Furthermore, roller or drum dryers can dry liquid foods, pastes, purees, and mashes. If you want to dry products that contain heat-sensitive components like vitamins, microbial cultures, antioxidants like carotenoids, ascorbic acid, plant phenol, and antibiotics, you can use freeze-drying method. Let's move on to our second method of preservation. It is called canning. This method is also termed as in-container sterilization. In this method, what we are doing is we sterilize the food product and hermetically sealed in containers to preserve them. Do you know what are the basic steps in canning process? Okay, now let's see what the typical stages of canning process. Initially, we should select appropriate raw materials to do the canning process. Here are the key points. The material we select should be in required quality and quantity. Also, they should withstand the heat treatment process. Once we receive the materials into our processing area, we should follow up preliminary operations like grading, sorting, cleaning, peeling, and cutting based on the nature of the material we are going to preserve. As a next step, you can go through a blanching process, depending on the material. It is a mild heat treatment where we're heating our food to a predetermined temperature. This process helps to inactivate enzymes that are responsible for enzymatic browning processes. It also helps to reduce microbial load and aid in packaging. After that, you can go through filling step. Here you should fill the products in sterilized containers or jars. Here, boiled syrup, brine, juice, or sauces are added over the food in containers. It will aid in better heat transfer and preservation. When filling, we need to take care of the accuracy of filling and headspace. We need to keep space in between packed food and container lids. As the next step, we should exhaust the air before move into the sealing process. It will help to avoid excessive development of pressure during heat treatment. After that, products with containers can move for sealing operations. Here, we hermetically seal the product. The next step is sterilizing the products. For this purpose, large pressure vessels called retorts are used on an industrial scale, which can be operated in batch-wise or continuous way. On a small scale, we can use either pressure canner or boiling water canner depending on the food we need to preserve. For instance, if we're going to preserve high acid containing foods like fruits, we can use boiling water canners which heat the food up to 100 Celsius. In this case, the organic acids that are naturally present in fruits will inhibit the growth of botulinum bacteria, while most bacteria, yeast, molds are killed due to heat. In order to preserve low acid containing food like meat, seafood and vegetables, we can use pressure canners which can provide temperature required to kill botulism bacteria. The final steps are cooling the products, labeling them and storage. Do you know how we can achieve food preservation by canning process? Basically, it's due to the application of heat, removal of air and creation of vacuum seal. You already know that in canning, we heat the products to a higher temperature. This heat will destroy the food spoilage and pathogenic microorganisms. Not only that, it will destroy the enzymes and inhibit the enzymes' activity. In the case of canned foods, the most prominent microbes that easily contaminate the product are called Clostridium botulinum. They can grow well inside low-acid foods and anaerobic conditions. The idea is that they can produce hazardous toxins called botulinum toxins under a low-oxygen environment. These botulinum bacteria not only spoil the food, but also can cause severe foodborne illnesses. So in canning, we have to ensure our canning process will kill all the botulism bacteria and their spores. In order to kill those hazardous microbes, we need to apply much higher temperature conditions. For instance, at 121 Celsius, it will destroy the Clostridium botulinum and their spores within a short time. In the case of canning, high-acid foods, botulinum can destroy due to high acidity. Since this canning process helps to destroy Clostridium botulinum in earlier, it's called as botulism cook. Also, the air removal process creates some kind of anaerobic condition. This will inhibit the growth of aerobic microbes. Since it reduces the amount of oxygen in containers, it will prevent deterioration of food due to oxidation reaction. For instance, it will prevent the creation of rancid odors and flavors due to lipid oxidation. Further, when containers are hermetically sealed, they are impermeable to liquid, gas and microorganisms. This will prevent the recontamination of the product. Thereby, it preserves the food by preventing the food spoilage. For example, canned fish products have a longer shelf life, approximately 2 years or more, compared to fresh fish. Which types of foods can we preserve by using a canning process? We can preserve fruits, vegetables, meat, fish, seafood, legumes-like foods by using this method. The next preservation method we are going to discuss today is called fermentation. In the fermentation process, what we are doing is we are using specific microorganisms to change the sensory properties like odor, flavor and functional properties of the food. The end product we are producing through this fermentation is desirable to consumers. Compared to other food preservation methods, this method is relatively inexpensive and can be done by using basic equipment. So developing countries and rural communities with limited facilities can get benefits out of this method. Do you know how can we achieve preservation through this process? Here, what happens is the key microorganisms who involve in food fermentation process will improve their own competitiveness by changing the environment. That means they produce different metabolites during food fermentation. Those produced metabolites will become lethal or inhibitory to other spoilage and pathogenic microorganisms. Thereby, it will preserve the food. For your understanding, in the production of alcoholic beverages like wine and beer, we are using yeast as our key microorganisms who involve in fermentation process. During this process, yeast produces metabolites called alcohol. Even though this produced alcohol is favorable for yeast, it will unfavorable and lethal for other spoilage microbes. This will inhibit the growth of contaminating microflora and inactivate them. Finally, it will preserve our food by preventing food spoilage. Let's see, what are the common examples of fermented foods? The most common fermented foods include wine, beer, sake, cider, yogurt, cheese, buttermilk, soy sauces and many more. Each of these fermented foods are produced by using key ingredients with the presence of specific microorganisms. For example, by fermenting grapes using yeast, the end product we produced are called wine, while barley are used to produce beer with the presence of yeast. Furthermore, cider is the product we get by fermentation of apple with yeast. Also, we can produce yogurt, cheese, and buttermilk-like products by fermenting milk with the action of the lactic acid bacteria. In addition to that, fermentation of cabbage with the presence of lactic acid bacteria will produce sauerkraut. I think now you have some idea about what happens in the fermentation process. Now let's summarize who are the key microorganisms that can be used in fermentation. These include yeast, lactic acid bacteria, acetic acid bacteria, molds like Aspergillus oryzae. Well, shall we move on to our next methods of food preservation? It is chilling and freezing. When chilling, or what we call refrigeration, we store food below 8 Celsius and temperatures above freezing. That means in chilling, we maintain temperature in between -1 Celsius and 8 Celsius. Chilling is considered an effective short-term preservation method. The idea is in chilling we cannot completely kill all the microorganisms. Instead, this method helps to slow down the chemical and microbial reactions rate of food. Thereby, it helps to prolong the shelf life of fresh and processed food. Chilling can be used to preserve fruits, vegetables, fresh fish, meat, dairy products, fruit juices, baked foods and more. Basically, under cool storage, perishable foods can be stored for days or weeks based on the food. When it comes to freezing, foods are stored at temperatures that maintain them in frozen conditions. We need temperatures of -18 Celsius or below in order to maintain good frozen storage. In freezing, What happens is that water available inside the food will immobilize to ice. As a result of that, it will reduce the free water available inside the food for the microorganisms and other chemical degradation process. So, freezing will preserve the foods due to reduction of water activity and low temperature conditions. Generally, frozen storage may preserve food for months or even years if properly packaged. Use it to preserve fruits, vegetables, meat and other foodstuff. I think up to now you may have some idea about what is meant by food preservation. What is meant by food spoilage? Importance of food preservation methods. How to classify food preservation methods and common food preservation methods that we can use to preserve our foods, including drying, canning, fermentation, chilling, and freezing. Hope you all enjoy the today video, and you may learn something out of it. So if you're willing to see more videos related to food science and technology, please like the video and subscribe to this channel. It will really be helpful to me to bring this kind of videos. Again, thank you for watching and we'll meet with another video.